Umbro is a historic company founded about 100 years ago, and they used to be one of the biggest names in world football. And while the clothing side of their business is still going really strong, their football boots have struggled to gain traction. And unfortunately, with the Umbro Speciali 98, I think I can see why. It's a classic reinterpretation of the 1998 Umbro model, but it really just struggles to stand out amongst the crowd in any real positive way. So in this review, I just want to talk about where this football boot is falling short and what Umbro actually needs to do if they want to make this football boot more memorable. And I also want to go over in this video what the better alternatives are if you are looking to pick up a pair of leather boots. And if you're interested in getting any of the boots that we discussed in this video, just check the link in the description. Also, we just launched a Patreon, so head over there if you're interested in supporting the channel. And if you want to pick up a free training guide, I'll also leave one in the description as well. So we're going to start off by talking about the design of the Umbro Speciali, but before we get too deep into it, I gotta clear the elephant in the room, and that's going to be the price of these boots. Because they retail for an MSRP of $200. And whenever I get into the territory of talking about a boot that's $200 or more, I'm expecting it to be the best of the best. Because if you're going to spend $200 or more on a pair of boots, they just should be high quality. So as I make some criticisms of this boot, it's important to keep in mind that price tag. So as far as looks are concerned, I actually think this is aesthetically a pretty nice football boot. It has a really classic retro design that's reminiscent of what you get with the Adidas Copa Mundial. It just has a really simple, kind of timeless leather boot look. But as always, the devil is in the details, and the execution just could be a lot better with these boots. Starting off with the kangaroo leather upper. It's just good. But it's kangaroo leather, so you know it's going to be relatively soft and plush. But compared to other kangaroo leather football boots, I just think it's not quite as soft and it's not quite as pliable as other leather uppers, especially compared to the Copa Mundial, which I think is the most direct competitor of this football boot. And just to make things clear, I've had the Copa Mundial for over 3 years. I've taken these boots through rain, mud, snow, I've completely beaten them up, and even then, the leather upper on these is still softer than the Umbros, and the Umbros I've only worn twice. And part of the problem with the feeling of the leather in these Umbros is going to be the inner lining. And that's because the liner of these football boots is just a little bit on the thicker side, so it's going to take away from that natural leather feeling when you're wearing the boots on feet. And then when you come to the side of the boot here, the logo kind of just feels like it's been slapped on there. And you may think that's being nitpicky, but it takes quite a lot of surface area away from the side of the boot, and it completely removes the nice feeling of the leather that you're getting at the forefoot. I think Umbro could have just done a much better job when trying to integrate the logo on the side of the boot if that's what they were going for. In comparison to the 3 stripes logo that Adidas has on the side of the Copa Mundial, these really just feel like they're seamlessly integrated into the boot and they don't affect the softness or the quality of the leather at all. Whereas the Umbros, it just kind of feels like a blotch. So although I've gone over some things I don't like, there are some pros with the Umbros. First off, the heel liner around these boots is really soft and really comfortable. Secondly, in some parts of the upper, you actually do get a nice softness to the kangaroo leather. I think just towards the top of the toe box right here is where the leather feels the softest. Next up, the fold over tongue. I kind of like it. I think it's going to be a love or hate thing for a lot of players. Maybe the shape could be a little bit different, but overall it's a really soft leather tongue. I think it was pretty well executed. Then turn around to the sole plate. It's a really simple sole plate, and I think it's well executed. They essentially went with a similar design of the original 1998 model. And you'll notice if you're comparing it with the sole plate on the Copa Mundial, they are both very similar. However, with the Umbros, you're going to get one extra stud towards the front of the foot. And another thing I like, it's a pretty small touch, but the sole plate is actually stitched all the way around there, the perimeter. And I think that's a nice feature because it can help reduce sole separation over time, which can improve the overall durability of the boots. But coming full circle here, considering that these boots are $200, I think the design could have been better. The leather could have been softer, the inner liner could have been more thin, and although this is being nitpicky, you can actually see some of the glue put together at the side of this boot, which I think is something I'd expect on a model that's less than $100. But when you're paying this much money for a football boot, I'm expecting everything to be top notch. So let's move on to the fit and feel of these boots. And when I first tried them on, I thought they felt decent. But every kangaroo leather football boot is gonna fit at least decent. So what are the specifics? And for me, the biggest positive I can say about these boots is that they are tremendously easy to just slide on and off. And in a world where all the modern football boots have elasticated collars and one-piece uppers and you have to struggle to put them on and off, I think that's a nice feature. Everything around the heel and the midfoot are really comfortable. I did notice that towards the toe box, they are going to run slightly on the narrow side. So if you have really wide feet, these probably aren't going to be the best option for you. Regarding sizing, I went with my standard 10.5 US, and that was definitely the best size for me. But something I noticed when I was wearing the boots is that I didn't really feel like I got a whole lot of stretch out of the leather on these boots. Now on boots that have a thinner leather upper, you can actually get a decent amount of stretch right out of the box. But because these Umbros felt a little bit bulky, especially towards the toe box area, I just wasn't getting any of that stretch from the leather. Now, is it true that these boots could mold to your feet gradually over time? Yes, that's absolutely the case because they're leather boots, but are they going to mold to your feet as well as a softer, thinner leather upper like you have on the Copas? I don't think so. And now the lacing system. So obviously this is a traditional lacing system with a U-throat construction and an isolated tongue here. And usually I'm a big fan of these lacing systems, and this one was pretty good and well executed in the Umbros. However, my big concern was with the final lace hole here. It really just wasn't quite high enough. It had to be a little bit further up closer to the ankle for it to be effective. Essentially what I'm saying is it affected the lockdown of the boots. Even when I tied these boots as tight as I could, I didn't really get that full feeling of security around my ankle. And that's a problem that could have been fixed if they just had that final lace hole about half an inch higher. Now that being said, I still thought the lockdown on these boots was acceptable. It's not something that's going to make the boots perform poorly. But sometimes I want to get my boots really tight, and I just felt like I didn't quite have that option with the Umbros. And overall, I just kind of thought the comfort was average. I thought it was on par with some $60 to $80 football boots that I reviewed recently. In fact, I'd put it on a similar level as the Copa Pure 2.3 and the Tiempo Legend 10 Academy, which is a little bit embarrassing because those are third tier takedown models while this is a top end boot. They're just not as comfortable as boots in the $100 to $150 price range, and certainly not as comfortable as boots in the $200 plus price range. And playing in these boots just revealed some of the same issues that I noticed when I first tried them on. Mostly being that the lockdown was just a little frustrating. I would tie the boots as tight as I could, and then after running around for 5 to 10 minutes, it would just feel like they got a little bit looser. And this is annoying because the last thing you actually want to do if you're playing in a game is have to constantly stop to retie your shoes. And interestingly enough, I also got some stud pressure while wearing these boots. And I found that pretty strange because that's usually something I only run into after wearing a pair of boots for several months on end. Not in a pair of boots that I'm wearing for the first time. Now you are going to get just enough lockdown and traction provided by the sole plate to the point where these boots aren't going to negatively affect your performance on the pitch. But that's about the only praise I can give because there just wasn't anything that was impressive or stand out about the performance of these boots. And that's going to bring me to the biggest problem with the Umbro Speciali, and that's actually threefold. And those problems are going to be the Copa Mundial, the Nike Premier 3, and the Adler Horenzo. Because for starters, the Adidas Copa Mundial here you can find for around $150, which is cheaper than the Umbros. And they're essentially a better execution of the same boot that Umbro is trying to create. They've got that retro design with a fold-over tongue, but they've got softer leather, better build quality, and they're just overall more comfortable. But say you wanted a leather football boot that's a little bit more modern, you could just go with the Nike Premier 3. Not to mention the Premier 3 is also going to offer what I consider to be a better design and way more lockdown compared to the Umbros. Don't forget the fact that the Premier 3s are also just over $100. And then finally, say you're looking for a leather football boot that's slightly outside of the mainstream from a brand that say isn't Nike or Adidas. You could just go for the Adler Horenzo. Now these boots from Adler beat the Umbros in virtually every single category. They've got a thinner, more comfortable leather upper, and they're just far superior in terms of design and build quality. So the point I'm trying to make here is that with all of the competition in the space of leather football boots, it's just really hard to recommend these. So what are my final thoughts on the Umbro Speciali 98? Well, these are a pair of football boots that I really wanted to enjoy, and I think that if they were priced at $100 or less, they'd be a lot easier to recommend. But considering that they retail for $200, I just don't think that they're good value for money. Because at the end of the day, regardless of the features you're looking for, there are just better leather football boots to get the job done compared to the Umbros. So that is going to do it for this video. If you've gotten the chance to try out these boots or any other boots from Umbro, let me know what you think of them. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.